feel like I'm on, what is it, the actor's room or whatever it is.
So, just want to thank you again for coming out to us. You know, the way that I got into, Dungeons and Dragons was not traditionally through tabletop gaming. It was through video games and books.
Oh.
Like Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, Drizzt, R.A. Salvatore, Tracy Hickman, and Margaret Weiss, Dragonlance.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those old Forgotten Realms by Ed Greenwood. So that's how I got into it. And I think that somehow some of us have gotten it too. But
New Schoolers,
yeah.
Second edition.
But yeah, can you share some of your earliest memories of Dungeons and Dragons?
Sure.
How was it being part of the birth and the growth of it?
I didn't think too much of it at the time, of course, because you can't see the forest for the trees right there. Yeah. I was a kid, but it was neat. I suppose I went to little conventions that we would have and things like that, and people would ask my dad for his autograph. They're like, "Oh my God, you're Gary Gygax. Can I have your autograph?" And he'd sign their books. Well, since I was 6 or whatever, I'd be like, "Do you want my autograph?" To the people. So I guess I must have done that quite a lot because a guy who was dating one of my older sisters made me a T-shirt, the old 70s style T-shirt with the iron-on letters, and it said on the front, "My name's Luke Gygax," and on the back in the rainbow letters it said, "Do you want my autograph?" so I wore that to conventions for a long time, so it was pretty cool. So it was neat. I guess my dad was within this little niche community, a celebrity as a kid. It was neat. I guess I got to sit down on weekends or after school or whatever and hang out with Dave Sutherland and Dave Trampier and Tom Wham and my brother Ernie and Skip and play games. And so I just was friends with people who were in that creative process. And I was a boss's kid, so maybe I wasn't friends, but I was a boss's kid and I got to hang out with them. So that's probably more accurate. But they were nice to me and I got exposed to that. I was able to hang out and be immersed in like the Dungeon Hobby Shop and play lots of games. That was the way that, for the most part as a family, that we related. We played railroad games and dungeon board games. I liked to play role-playing games with my father, and we'd talk about it, and I would read his products. And it was really just like, it was what we shared in common as a family. Other than some simple things like whatever, going on some walks or some other, or going to church and stuff like that.
And growing up around the table, other than your father,
Mm-hmm.
who was it that really took you under their wing and kind of helped you show you the ropes and that kind of type of stuff?
Well, my older brother was also very involved, and he was 11 years older than me. So he was a high schooler, and he's pretty much in high school at that time. So he would game with me, and then Skip Williams was a local neighborhood kid. So I would play in Skip's game or with my brother Ernie. And then, of course, I got drafted into dungeon mastering for my sisters because they didn't want to do it. So they're like, "Come on, run in D&D for us." So I would just make up crazy games. I was like 7 or 8, so I don't know. I could read a little bit, but probably not that great. But I would just make stuff up and be like, "All right, you've got a wand of wonder," and "Oh, look, you found a deck of many things," because those were cool, chaotic, random stuff that kids love. But it was a blast. Who doesn't want to have summon a rhinoceros in a 10-foot wide corridor or something, right?
And then, growing up DMing for your sisters, who was really in your first gaming group, like your first hardcore gaming group?
The first gaming group that I DM'd, I was usually the player. My dad was typically DMing for me, so I was lucky. I got to play a lot. So when I was like 7, 8, I would DM for my sisters, neighbors, that sort of stuff. But otherwise, we would all kids would come over to my house and bug my dad to DM for us. So it was great. And he was a good sport. He DM'd a bunch. So my first game of D&D that I played was a long time ago, so it's hard to remember everybody. But Rob Kuntz was there, my brother Ernie was there, and James Ward was there. I believe Mark Ratner, who people don't know anymore, he's kind of faded off. He did work on the space shuttle. He worked on the first space shuttle. He made the glue compound It's for the tiles, so it didn't get burned up on the way back in. So he was one of the guys who worked on that. I remember that bit about him because he was excited later on when we talked about that. Former Army guy, I think, too. But those are the people I remember. My dad DM'd, and there was probably 8 people there, though, but I'll be darned if I can remember who it was.
And, you know, shifting gears a little bit, after your father got into the industry and, you know, really got the name for himself, what were some of the bigger challenges that you remember that he overcame during his time? And, you know, how has that helped shape your perspective and creativity, you know, going through your own, you know, world of WARRAM and whatnot?
Yeah, so there's a couple big challenges that he had. I'd say the first one, there's a couple, but I can't talk about it. We only have so much time. So he wasn't a businessman, right? He didn't graduate college, or high school, excuse me. He did, I think he got his GED, but he never went to college. So he's growing this company, and I thought he did a very, very good job by starting things like, he started GenGHISCON, he started Dragon Magazine, knowing that it would help publicize this. He was a prolific writer. He was, constantly promoting the company. So I thought he did a nice job with that. Then in 1980 probably, and someone here probably knows, but my memory's not perfect on this one. James Dallas Egbert III disappeared at Ann Arbor, Michigan. He was a prodigy. Michigan State? Ah, dang, all right, was it? It's not your, okay, not U of M, okay, well, whatever. It was one of those over there. It's in Michigan though, right? Okay, so I was pretty close. I was one of, 50 states. So this kid disappeared. I believe he was 15 and he was in college. And he might have even been his second or third year of college or something. So he was a prodigy. He disappeared, he played D&D. Apparently they would find a place to play D&D. It wasn't always places to play D&D. I would play on like the stairs outside the door or in the lunchroom or something like that, right? Wherever we could as kids. So they'd play in the steam tunnels in the college. So basically they started the, oh my God, some satanic cult has done something to this kid and he's probably murdered, or something, and his soul has been stripped, and Satan is, is burning in the lake of fire. So it started the satanic panic, where there's a lot of people saying how Dungeons and Dragons was harmful, it was from the devil, etc. So my dad had to navigate that and go on various talk shows and deal with it. I'm sure he laughed at it. He laughed it off when there was like book burnings and stuff. He's like, yeah, it's great for sales. Go out and buy some more books and burn them, right? But at the same time, I'm sure it wasn't a good feeling to have people say you're evil. He was pretty committed religiously. At times he's straight, as every person does. But we were Jehovah's Witnesses, and he used to give talks at the Jehovah's, at the congregation and all that sort of stuff. So that was important to him. So that bugged him, and also to get death threats from people saying we're going to kill you because you're promoting Satan's work. That was not great, and it certainly worried my mom. And there were weirdos who would come drive by our house and do stuff like that. So that was pretty weird. So navigating that, I thought he did a nice job there. And then, of course, bouncing back from losing his company. That's just heartrending. And it's worth reading and digging into. Empire of Imagination by Mike Whitwer is a good book. There's The Dreams in Gary's Basement, which was just released by Pat Kilbane. That's a documentary that'll touch on some of those things. I think it's a very interesting story how my dad went from a black sheep who was called like a loser and a nobody and created this revolutionary game, the rise, his personal, his failures and getting the company stripped away from him, losing everything. And then at the end, he really found himself again back as a small creative person, creating games, being surrounded by other creatives who he enjoyed, exchanging information and ideas with them. And that's what he truly loved. That he was back to his tribe. He didn't have to manage a big business. He didn't have all this pressure. It was more what he was comfortable with, and I think he was very happy with that. And one thing I'm very also pleased to be able to do is, after some maneuvering and taking care of some issues, and it took a little while to get where I am today, my dad's estate is now, we're now able to develop his intellectual property again, and Troll Lord Games will be working on Castle Zagade, which is his home campaign that's better known as the World of Greyhawk. That was his campaign, but this was his private mega dungeon that he ran for many years. And sometimes he would pull bits and pieces out to create other things, but this was really never shown to anybody. He closely guarded this binder, this black binder of handwritten notes and maps. So yeah, we're able to blow the dust off of that project that was about 60% done before he passed away and was mothballed. We're now getting it out and producing again. So I'm very excited for that. So look.
That is awesome. So what we're gonna do now is Donnie's gonna take it away, and we're gonna open up the floor to some of the questions from the fans out here. So does anybody have any questions they would like to ask Luke?
Thank you. Hey, Luke, thanks for coming. Your father had a reputation for when he was first running his RPG that he was sort of disconnected from the table. There were the players over here and him at a desk, and it was a very adversarial sort of thing. That's the reputation. Is that true, and did it ever change?
No, he played at the table oftentimes. If he was playing at a desk or something like that, it was just because of the room configuration. So I would say he came out of a wargaming tradition with a little bit more oppositional. No, that was more the standard, right? And gaming has evolved over time. Think about movies from the 70s. If you watch a movie from the 70s, the pacing is totally different. How long it takes to develop something, even the way they do shots, dialogue, etc. So that's all different, and things change over time. I think role-playing gaming, when it started, what were you doing? What did people do for the first several years when you're playing D&D, by and large? Go into a dungeon, kick in a door, monster, fight monster, monster drops treasure, go to the next thing, oh, there's a trap, there's a whatever, then another random group of creatures that you would fight, right? So there wasn't a lot to it, right? So it was dungeon exploration, mapping the dungeon, resourcing your managing your resources, because healing was harder. You only had a certain number of spells. The Vancian magic system where you had to pick all your spells beforehand. And I think mapping and figuring out where stuff was and where secret areas could be was more important, right? And also, there were no skills, so you weren't going to roll dice to check something. If you wanted to do something, you would describe, well, I'm going to search for a secret door. Okay, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to get out a hammer and I'm going to tap the walls, and I'm going to look at this thing. Is there any bits that move or what? So you had to kind of describe more what's going on when you're going to overcome something. So there weren't mechanics to handle it, so it was a little different. And again, it came out of a wargaming tradition. So I think the DM or referee in the early days would their job was not necessarily to make it super fun or cool, but they were there to give you the feedback to the questions that you were doing as you're seeking through. So was it more adversarial? Yeah, perhaps. Did he gloat when he got a good die roll? Sure, yeah, that was all right. He did that sometimes. But I don't think, I suspect he pulled punches sometimes, because, and other times he didn't. I mean, my first character made it to 10th level ranger, went through the giant and the drow series and all that. I was 9 or 10. I was bugging my dad to play D&D. And he said, okay, sure. So me and my sister sat down. It was after a work day or whatever. And he's like, okay, I got something for you. And he starts describing, well, across the vast swamp or whatever, you've heard there's a crypt that holds, an ancient wizard named Acererak who, has a bunch of treasure and is evil. And I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, great. I don't know what this is. He took me to the Tomb of Horrors. And my poor character ended up going through one of the misty tunnels. All his stuff was teleported away. I know now. Sorry, spoiler alert. It's only been out for 40-some years. It was teleported to the back to Acererak, and I was teleported to the front. So I'm walking around with nothing. I'm naked, and I find some levers in a room. I'm exploring around. I push all the levers upward. I fall down a 100-foot pit. 100-foot pit, right? I had like 115 hit points though because I had an 18 constitution, I was a 10th level ranger. So I survived the fall, but I was naked with no food, nothing to do. So I never played that character again. I think there was like some allergies around because I remember my eyes getting a little watery at that point in time. But he said, oh, no, if you did come back, Morden Cannon sent you on this mission, he'd come and scry and find you and take it. But I never played the character again. So the character died, right? We know that, but he pulled the punch a little bit. So some days he didn't pull the punch, but then later on, probably I was 13, playing Melf, I was fighting the Gorgamira in Saj Camp. There was a new creature, right? So it had a dragon, red dragon head, and a bunch of other Gorgon. It was horrible. So saving throws galore, right? I breathed fire breath on me, burned up my displacer cloak, which is a very precious commodity in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And when back then, for those of you who don't know, when you failed to save, all of your gear, you had to save. Yeah. So I lost that. So I had 9 hit points left, and I fought it for 5 melee rounds. And it got like 5 attacks around, and it didn't hit me. I was either really lucky, or he was pulling a punch and let me hit this thing. So, but a bit adversarial. Over time now, I think what we've changed as GMs and referees, we're more following the rule of cool. I think the mechanics allow for more opportunities not to get killed. But the culture then was, oh, whoops, I died. Okay, let me roll up another one. Or if it's a new character, scratch out the name and put, that was Bob. This is his twin, Rob. Boom, here you go. And you're back in the adventure. That's a long answer to a short question.
I saw that you listed EverQuest up there. I'm very curious if you ever played EverQuest personally.
Have you ever what?
Played EverQuest?
Oh, I've never played EverQuest.
Okay.
I've never played that game.
Okay, cool. I was just wondering.
Sorry, nope, I haven't played it. I heard RuneQuest is pretty good, but not sure about Ever. It's all right.
What's an example of something that you did that made it into the game, like one of your ideas or your favorite one?
Sure. So the first time I had an idea that I remember getting into something was I was watching Super Friends. Remember the Super Friends show? They'd was it Sheep of or whatever? I think that was Super Friends. So they were fighting some guys in glowing armor who could break through walls and that sort of stuff. And I was like, Dad, this got this super cool idea. There's guys in glowing armor. And we were talking about it as a Gamma World adventure because Gamma World was relatively, they needed a new Gamma World module, GW1. And so we ended up talking about it, and he took some notes, and then he developed what became the Legion of Gold, which is the powered armor guys who are going around in really what was around our home. If you look at the names, it's around Walworth and Elkhorn and all that stuff. And so I got a with credit on that. So that's the first time. It was probably 7 or something. And then I was adventuring in Greyhawk Dungeon, probably 12 years old. And I would solo adventure because my brothers and sisters were all older and they were gone. And I'd just pester my dad at night and say, hey, I want to play a game. And so I used to, again, kicking dungeon door, fight bad guy, right? So that's what I was doing. Elf, fighter, magic user, kicking the door. And more often than not, there'd be a couple things. Either missile weapon users in the background with meat shields in front, or spellcaster in the back with meat shields in front, right? So I was like, man, I knew that as I was a spellcaster, if I took a point of damage, my spell was ruined. So I thought, if I could put some damage on that spellcaster, even just a point for a couple rounds, that would buy me time to fight through the meat shields, and then, game over, right? So I was like, well, can I tie a vial of acid or oil or something on an arrow? No, you can't do that. It's not going to work. Well, okay, can I magically make the arrow fire or acid or something? And he's like, well, yeah, okay, you can do that. You can research it. So I did take out a game time and write up what I thought it would be and spend the gold pieces and seek out some sages and get some advice. And then we wrote up the spell Melf's Acid Arrow. And the whole point of that was, hey, there's the person who can cast spells, right? It's for first edition, right? Now, 5th edition doesn't make as much sense, right? But boom, you would make it to hit roll on them. They'd take a little bit of damage, but then they're affected for 3 rounds, something like that. That's 3 rounds where they can't cast. What good is this magic user who can't cast unless they have a wand, right? Something like that. So that was the whole point. So that one is one instance.
Who came up with the idea of a 20-sided dice?
Oh, man. So I think the 20-sided die has been around. I don't know the answer to this one, so I'm going to make some suppositions. But the 20-sided die existed for thousands of years. I think the Egyptians had icosahedrons. Who decided to use dice for gaming? I'm pretty sure my dad did that because he realized he was an insurance underwriter who looks at actuarial tables and probability curves and stuff, right? So he was like, I only get certain curves from D6s. So they would use chits beforehand, like just a piece of cardboard with numbers on that would give you more numbers to choose from. And then they found through an art supply school platonic solids. Those had some numbers on them. Those became those were some dice. But dice existed. Rarely there was numbered dice for war games and stuff that were before the 1974 that had them. But it became much, much more popular and in demand through role-playing games.
I think we got time for one more question.
Yep, then you're going to finish with the last one.
I was just kind of curious about the makeup of the average table or most of the tables for you as a child growing up. Like, was your family and your brothers and sisters, were they sort of like all the play testers for your dad? Or was it common to have his friends and a few of the kids that were into it? Or like, were all of your brothers and sisters into playing?
So all of my brothers and sisters played at various times, but the girls, for the most part, kind of fell away from it fairly quickly. I think when they hit their mid-teens, they were kind of like, this isn't really for me. My brother and I generally were well, my older brother moved out at 18 and was gone, so that wasn't, he went out and did his own thing for a while. But I was there, and then my dad would bring in usually other creative people from TSR to help test things. And funny enough, a couple high school kids, it is a funny story. My sister doesn't like it when I say this one, but Heidi was dating a guy, they dated a couple times, figured out, we're really more friends than anything else. But he would come and pick her up, and he would see us gaming on that night. And so he'd appear, and he'd be like, oh, hello, Mr. Gygax, how are you doing, et cetera. And then he left. So then when they broke up, he came over. He's like, hey, do you have any room in your game? Do you think I could do it? And so his name, I call him Sonny, because his name's Jerry, and his dad's name's Jerry, so Sonny. But Jerry Savage, I became friends with him, and he was one of our playtesters through Sajkanth and some other stuff. He's actually the reason I joined the Army, because I was in college. He was gotten out of the Army and was back in Madison, and he talked to me. He was like, hey, have you thought about the Army? I was like, yeah, I was going to join the reserves, and I ended up going active duty. But funny, he retired as a lieutenant colonel. I retired as a lieutenant colonel from the AGR system, and now he comes to GaryCon and creates all sorts of cool, like woodwork and wands and staves and doodads and stuff like that. So that's what he likes to do in his spare time, and we're still buddies. So good thing. So yeah, so it was a mix. It was a mix of neighborhood kids and pros. All the way up until my dad passed away, people would come and knock on his door from time to time and be like, "Are you Gary Gygax?" Yeah, seriously, they would. I'm not even kidding. And he'd be like, "Well, yes, I am." He's like, "Oh my God!" And they'd want to tell. I can tell. He's like, "Well, come on and sit down on the porch, right? You want a glass of iced tea or something, whatever." And then if he had an opening in his game, he'd be like, "I play on Thursdays. You're local, right? You want to join us in the game?" They're like, "What? Really? Yeah." So many times, that's how people got into his game.
Great.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think how many pretentious gamers are there really out there, right? We were like the downtrodden, right? So what are you gonna, you're gonna be a jerk to other people? No, come on, we're welcoming people, and I think, that's really part of gaming too. That's why gamers, I say this all the time, gamers are good people. Are there some exceptions out there? Yes, of course, in any group, but by and large, gamers are great. And I've learned through running GaryCon, the staff at the hotel loves gamers. They love GaryCon. They said, this is our favorite convention all year. Everybody's nice. No one gripes or moans or yells at us, and you guys tip great. So,
Yep.
yep. So I'm telling you, gamers are good people.
And, you know, to wrap up this little interview, what ways do you feel responsible for continuing the Gygax legacy?
Yeah.
And, you know, how do you balance that with forging your own path in this industry?
That's a good question. And I tell you what, being the son of somebody who'd made a mark, you know, in their, certainly in this field, and was a known name, when you're a teenager, that can be difficult, right? So I didn't want to be like my dad. I wanted to be my own person, right? We all feel that way. I think that's common as a kid, right? You want to identify and be independent. So the Army was great for me. Went in and it's like, okay, great. This is what you are. You wear a uniform. These little doohickeys over here mean this, and everybody knows how to treat you. So that was great. I loved it, but I still gamed. I always gamed and related, but it allowed me to be somebody, to have a role outside of that and not feel like I was under my dad's shadow, right? And that's very important, I think, for anyone to feel like they, whatever, self-actualization or whatever it is, realize you can make an impact in the world. When my dad passed away, it really hit me how important he was. He didn't just create a cool game, he really changed culture. He left an impact on our society. And I hadn't maybe realized that fully until he was gone and people came and talked to me about it and what D&D meant to them and how it impacted their lives, how it opened doors for them. So I was like, wow, okay. How many people really know my dad's name anymore? Because his name is not on the front of the books. If you're not of a certain age, you may not know who Gary Gygax is. And I said, that's a shame. I need to change that. So that's why, you know, I go to conventions and I talk about it. I try to get on podcasts and interviews, and I run GaryCon, and I had to go through quite some serious lengths to be able to make sure that his IP was accessible again, because he asked me before he died, hey, I have these projects, please make sure they get done. So it's taken me a while, but I'm doing that. And I would like the world to know, and I've been trying to get a biopic done on him, and fortunately, Pat Kilbane finally finished The Dreams in Gary's Basement, a few years late, but he did that. But I would love to see a larger, you know, something like, was a movie called Social Media that was about Facebook? Was that what it was called? Social Network, thank you. So something along those lines, because the story, and if you read, do a little research, you know, just Empire of Imagination, super easy. You can get an audiobook too, and Sam Witwer reads that. He's a voiceover actor and Mike Witwer's brother. So that's great. So for me, I just want to make sure my dad isn't forgotten. I feel very blessed to be able to carry on, help forward his legacy. Because look at all the great fun that people have. Look at all the good that it has done in the world. I mean, not a lot of people can say that, and I just want to help promote that so we get more of that in the world.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Great. Again, I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Coming twice to
Yeah.
GenghIsCon.
Yeah, it's great. This is a great little convention.
Yeah.
So if you guys haven't been to a lot of other conventions, this is a really good one. It's tabletop centric, right?
Yep.
RPG centric. Sure, there's a dealer hall, but that's not the main focus. A lot of places feel like they're expositions, where it's mostly about the vendor hall. There's a lot of really dedicated GMs here, and it's friendly. And they have the bar opens at like 10 o'clock in the morning or something. We're like, wow, okay. That's dangerous. But no, it's great. Other than being at like high up in the sky and being super dry, it's great. So, and Donnie does a fantastic job, so get a hand for Donnie. Yeah. And thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys very much.